The U.S. military said it failed to intercept a ballistic missile during its most recent test. On June 21st, a medium-range ballistic missile was launched from a test range in Hawaii at 7:20 p.m. local time. The USS John Paul Jones, a guided missile destroyer, detected and tracked the missile. However, while the ship launched the interceptor, it failed to shoot down the target. This was the second time the U.S. military has attempted an intercept with the SM-3 Block 2A. The previous attempt, back in February, was successful. The failed test was conducted in cooperation with Japan's defense ministry. The U.S. and Japan are jointly working to develop an interceptor to shoot down medium-range ballistic missiles. The two countries have been investing in technology to counter North Korean missile threats. For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
A video of a young Mormon girl sharing her sexuality with the congregation before her microphone is cut off by leaders of the church has sparked a slew of discussions about religious leaders handling LGBT issues. On May 7th, Savannah stood in front of members of her church where she talked about her belief as a child of heavenly parents they didn't make any mistakes when they created her. Wearing a white blouse and red tie, the 13-year-old said, "They did not mess up when they gave me freckles or when they made me to be gay." She continued to say, "God loves me just this way." Heather Kester, her mother, revealed on Friday that her daughter wants to be an example for other LGBT people in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
On Friday, officials have said that military chiefs will seek a 6-month delay before letting transgender people enlist in their services. According to one of the officials, service leaders have made up an agreement that rejected Army and Air Force requests for a 2-year wait on the matter. Transgender service members have been able to serve openly in the military since last year, when former Defense Secretary Ash Carter ended the ban. But policies have also been developed to allow people already identifying as transgender to newly join the military if they meet a set of rules.
Tropical Storm Cindy has been downgraded to a tropical depression as it continues to drench the upper southern parts of the U.S. There are numerous flash flood warnings across West Virginia and the Mississippi Valley. Emergency officials have urged residents of these areas to continue to monitor the storm system. The next few days are expected to bring heavy downpours, threatening to push river and lake levels higher as residue from the tropical storm moves through Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia.
An imminent attack on the Grand Mosque in Mecca was prevented by Saudi security forces on Friday. A suspect blew himself up in a nearby neighborhood when his home was surrounded by security forces. 5 other suspects, including one woman, were arrested. The Grand Mosque is the largest mosque in the world, and it surrounds one of the holiest sites in Islam. Millions of worshippers make the pilgrimage to the Grand Mosque during the annual Hajj.
Every minute, 2 or 3 patients arrive at Sabain Hospital in Sana'a. Children, many already malnourished, also suffering from cholera. The outbreak began last year, but a second wave of the waterborne disease is spreading fast. So far, about 180,000 cases recorded over the past 2 months. That's more than the total number of cholera cases recorded worldwide in 2015. It's the vulnerable that are afflicted the most. At least half of the patients are children, frail and too weak to even care for their suffering.
We are receiving many patients from all over the country, and some are in bad condition. We're facing many obstacles. We lack many medical equipment, rehydration solutions, and medicine. There's a lot of pressure on us. We need more aid to reach clinics in rural areas and towns so we can take a little of the pressure away from us.
Cholera can be easily treated by replacing lost fluids right away. But after 2 years of war and airstrikes, much of the health system has collapsed. Many clinics and hospitals are not operating, and access to clean water is rare in many parts of the country. So for a large number of patients, reaching the closest medical facility can be life-threatening. Many of those at Sabain Hospital had to travel for hours to reach here, and too often it's too late. More than 1,200 people have died, and doctors warn these are just the early stages of the outbreak. Others are barely alive. The UN is blaming all the warring sides and their international backers for what it calls a man-made humanitarian catastrophe.
This is because of conflict. It's man-made, it's very severe, the numbers are absolutely staggering, it's getting worse, and the cholera element, in addition to all the lack of food, the lack of medical supplies for people, is of course primarily one has to put that at the door of all the parties to the conflict.
It's expected that the number of cholera cases will reach 300,000 in the coming weeks, and the number of dead will also increase. Sabain Hospital, one of the few still functioning in the country, is overwhelmed. New patients are being put in tents to be treated. Oxfam has called for, quote, a cholera ceasefire, but the war shows no sign of letting up, and there's no sign of an end to the suffering either. Hud Abdelhamid, Al Jazeera.
A wildfire has been menacing Salt Lake City, Utah for nearly a week, doubling in size for the second night in a row. As extreme heat creates challenges for firefighters, the blaze has continued to torch more homes that residents have already evacuated. So far, the fire in Utah has charred 43 square miles and has destroyed 13 homes. According to a Forest Service spokesperson, at least 700 people have fled their homes since Saturday.
Two of the U.S. military's E-4B planes, commonly called the Doomsday Plane, were damaged and knocked out of service recently in a tornado at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, according to U.S. military officials. The E-4B is the military's National Airborne Operations Center, and if there's a national emergency or attack, the plane would serve as the command and control hub for the President, Secretary of Defense, and Joint Chiefs. The military has 4 E-4Bs in the fleet, so now half of the fleet is not operational. The official said the mission can still be accomplished with the 2 aircraft grounded.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has come under attack from a host of European leaders over her plans for EU nationals living in the UK after Brexit. May, who revealed her proposals to leaders on Thursday, was forced to defend her stance as Europe's politicians left the PM with little doubt of their disappointment. Jean-Claude Juncker, head of the European Commission, said the offer was not sufficient, while Donald Tusk, president of the European Council, said it was below our expectations. On Thursday, May insisted, however, this is a fair and serious offer.
As Hollywood supports diversity with Wonder Woman and Black Panther, there is one question on some people's minds. Recently, Ian McKellen was asked which LGBTQ superhero he'd like to see hit theaters, and the star joked, "I've suggested one with James Bond, haven't I?" Frankly, looking at some of the images of these superheroes, I'm surprised to know that they're not gay. It's the reason I played Magneto. I wanted to look like that. McKellen said he felt Marvel would be one such studio who could bring a gay superhero to theaters without being trite.
According to reports, one of the demands made by Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt for restoring ties with Qatar is the shutdown of the country's state-backed media network Al Jazeera. Even though Qatar has turned Al Jazeera into a global brand, the network has made enemies across the Middle East for its criticism of Arab governments. In a statement Friday, Al Jazeera said the demand for its closure is nothing but an attempt to silence the freedom of expression in the religion. The statement went on to add, "We assert our right to practice our journalism professionally without bowing to pressure from any government or authority, and we demand that governments respect the freedom of media."
On August 21st, local officials expect an area around Madras, Oregon to be crammed with people from around the world when a solar eclipse throws the entire region into complete darkness for 2 minutes. The phenomenon, which will be the first coast-to-coast total solar eclipse to cross the continental U.S. in 99 years, will first be visible in Madras because of its clear, high desert skies, flat landscape, and stunning mountain views. According to reports, up to 1 million eclipse chasers will reportedly head to Oregon for the celestial event, with local officials bracing for as many as 100,000 in and around Madras.
This is Xinmo village in Maoxian County, China. Early on Saturday, tons of earth and debris came crashing down from the side of a mountain, while many villagers were still sleeping. The area had been deluged by days of heavy rain. The state broadcaster says 500 people, including the military, are now helping in the rescue operation. Heavy machinery and sniffer dogs have also been brought in. but rescuers often have to resort to more crude and simple methods. Workers say they've detected signs of life beneath the rubble and are desperately trying to reach survivors. After a few hours, they had managed to pull a young couple and their baby from the debris. They are now in hospital.
We heard a strange noise at the back of our house, and it was a bit loud. Wind was blowing into the room, so I wanted to close the door. When we came out, the water flow washed us away instantly.
A weather alert is in place for Maoxian County, with rainstorms forecast for the next few days. That would make rescue operations even more difficult. Emergency workers will also have to work on clearing a 2-kilometer stretch of a river that's been blocked to prevent any secondary disasters. Florence Louis, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
Philippine Senator Joel Villanueva has filed a bill to penalize individuals or groups who spread fake news. The Senate Bill number 1492, announced on June 22nd, aims to stop the spread of fake news in traditional and online media platforms. Senator Villanueva says fake news should, quote, not be taken lightly. In the bill, any individual person found guilty of creating or distributing fake news could face a fine of up to 5 million Philippine pesos and up to 5 years in prison. If the offender is a public official, they could pay twice the amount of fine and serve double the time of imprisonment, along with being removed from office. The bill also lists mass media or social media platforms that fails to remove fake news could be fined up to 20 million Philippine pesos. For United News International from Metro Manila, I am Crystal Yap.
Groups representing pediatricians, cancer specialists, heart doctors, and family physicians across the U.S. are claiming the House and Senate health care bills would make things worse, not better. Within hours of the Senate's draft release Thursday, groups representing medical professionals denounced it, with the American Heart Association CEO Nancy Brown saying this health care bill is literally heartless. Dr. Bruce Johnson, president of the American Society for Clinical Oncology, added Friday, "We are disappointed that the legislation fails to meet our guiding principles for healthcare reform by halting Medicaid expansion, reinstating annual and lifetime coverage caps, and cutting coverage for essential healthcare benefits, including cancer screening."
Russian warships fired 6 missiles on ISIS targets in Syria on Friday, according to state media. In a statement posted to RIA, the defense ministry said, from the eastern part of the Mediterranean, the frigates Admiral Isen, Admiral Grigorovich, and the submarine Krasnodar of the Russian Navy fired 6 cruise missiles caliber on the ISIS targets in Syria. Submarine Krasnodar carried out launches of cruise missiles from an underwater position. The Russian Defense Ministry also said Turkey and Israel were informed about the missile launches.
Starbucks is moving forward with its plan to hire thousands of refugees despite its initial announcement drawing mixed reactions from consumers. On June 20th, World Refugee Day, Starbucks announced that by 2022 it will employ 2,500 refugees in several of its European markets. They include Great Britain, France, Austria, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, Germany, and the Netherlands. The coffee giant said it had already started the hiring process. Back in January, Starbucks pledged to hire 10,000 refugees to work in its stores worldwide by 2022, a plan that drew praise from some customers but resulted in others vowing to boycott the chain. The move came in response to President Donald Trump's executive order temporarily banning citizens of 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the U.S. Starbucks also announced it will team up with the International Rescue Committee to help refugees find jobs with other companies. For United News International, I'm Milet Uni.
Renowned scientist Stephen Hawking thinks humans need to get off this rock we call home within the next century. On June 20th, Hawking gave the keynote address at the Starmus Festival in Norway, which aims to help the public better appreciate science. Hawking said space travel would encourage the scientific advancement necessary for our survival. He added that humanity faces threats from climate change and limited natural resources, as well as imminent asteroid strikes. Hawking said, quote, "It is time to explore other solar systems. Spreading out may be the only thing that saves us from ourselves. I am convinced that humans need to leave Earth." In anticipation of his upcoming BBC documentary on the subject, Hawking said humans need to colonize another planet within 100 years or face extinction. The BBC said Hawking's theory isn't as fantastical as it sounds. Science fact, it is closer to science fiction than we ever thought. For United News International, I'm Kimberly Caldwell.
Rain bands reeling away from Tropical Depression Cindy spread drenching rains from the southeast to the Midwest, triggering flash flood warnings over several states. The storms, stretching for hundreds of miles, are expected to push river levels higher in coming days as the remnants of a tropical storm cross Tennessee and Kentucky into West Virginia. The severe weather, which was blamed for recent coastal flooding in the Deep South, tornadoes, and one death, is rumbling closer to the densely populated East Coast.
Sydney has plans to install concrete barricades in its prominent pedestrian-only areas to mitigate against the risk of vehicle attacks by terrorists. Australian police confirmed that the country's largest city is also considering more permanent measures, such as garden beds or other landscaping features in Martin Place, although there is no specific threat to Sydney at this time. Earlier this month, a van hit worshippers near a mosque in London, the third attack of its kind in the city since March.
Traffic searches by highway patrols in Colorado and Washington dropped by nearly half in 2012. According to NBC News, that coincides with when both states legalized marijuana. A new analysis of police data also reveals pot legalization reduced the racial disparities in traffic stops, but not by much. Blacks and Hispanics are still searched at higher rates than whites. Researchers at Stanford behind the Open Policing Project claim the threshold before a search is performed is also lower for minority drivers than it is for whites. Those differences remained in Colorado and Washington even after the overall number of searches dropped following pot legalization. Turkish high schools will no longer teach the theory of evolution. According to the head of the National Board of Education, Alpagian Durmus, the subject has been removed from the curriculum due to a reform to eliminate controversial topics and emphasize national values. He said, if our students don't have the background, the scientific knowledge, or information to comprehend the debate around controversial issues, we have left them out. The change will go into effect for the 2017 to 2018 school year. He also said history classes will look beyond Eurocentrism.
On Friday, the Council on American Islamic Relations launched a mobile app allowing victims to report bias incidents. The organization is hoping to get an accurate count of anti-Muslim hate crimes in the United States. The group's launch of its Making Democracy Work for Everyone app comes a month after it reported a 44% surge in the number of hate crimes reported by U.S. Muslims last year. Concerned that the 260 hate crimes CARE learned of last year represent just a fraction of the actual total, the group intends the app to increase reporting. Corey Saylor, who runs the group's anti-Islamophobia effort, said, in a moment of trauma, you're not thinking that you need to go online and enter something, but your phone will always be in your hand.
The United States Marine Corps said on Friday that it had resumed flight operations for Lockheed Martin Corp's F-35B fighter jets after temporarily suspending them a day ago because of software problems. The commanding general of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing decided to suspend flight operations because of anomalies in the Automatic Logistics Information System software upgrade. The Joint Program Office said it and Lockheed Martin Corp had made the software fix without giving details of what measures were taken.
On Friday, the United States government approved the sale of a naval variant of the Predator drone made by General Atomics Aeronautical Systems to India. Reuters reported earlier on Friday that the U.S. government was expected to authorize the sale of drones ahead of a visit next week by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India has been looking to buy 22 of the unarmed surveillance aircraft worth more than $2 billion to keep watch over the Indian Ocean.